I'm John Kraft with the Edgar County Watchdogs. We're here to talk about Avon Township and the house that was purchased, uh, remodeled somewhat, and then transferred out of the township possession. Kirk.
Yeah, my name's Kirk Allen. I'm the co-founder of the Edgar County Watchdogs.
Hi, Michelle Baumann. I'm presently a trustee for Avon Township.
I'm Krista Larson. I'm a former Avon Township trustee.
Okay, so if we can start with how you believe the purchase went with the house. I understand the board did not approve it, but if you could kind of run down a little bit of the timeline, how that process happened, and also any work that was done on the house, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So we first found out about the house back in July of 2019. The supervisor presented at the board meeting that he purchased the house, that he wanted to use it for low income rental. And we had a lot of questions on that to start off with, because how can a government agency decide who's going to be living in that house? There's a lot of problems just to begin with that. He wanted the board to go into the house and start fixing the house up. A lot of us have no skills how to do that. He had no plan. He just decided he was going to buy a house and he was going to do what he wanted with it. I can't hear you.
After the house was purchased, do you know how much money was spent on the renovations or anything like that?
I believe over $10,000 that he, the township has put into the house, and we fought most of those bills.
And
they got paid anyway.
Most of them did. They did get paid, and some of it was because we did not want to default on our local businesses that did the work without our approval. Even though we held the bills off, a lot of us felt that in the end we had to pay for them. There is a list of all the bills.
Yeah, we don't need to run that deep into it. Didn't he have to pay the back taxes on that when they got it?
Crystal, do you know about the back taxes?
Correct. He did have to pay the back taxes on it.
How much was that? Yeah.
I think it was around $1,100, give or take.
And originally you told me there was no taxes.
So that's less than what the township allegedly sold the property for last week. If you total up the cost of remodeling.
Yeah, there were taxes, there were other costs involved, partial remodels, building permits, loan permits, disposal costs, lock changes. There were a number of small incidental things that fell under what would normally be a payment authorization radar. So they were all aggregated together into that total sum of almost $11,000 in the total cost of the transfer.
All right, and I understand he bought some tools too that you don't know where they're at.
Correct.
Correct, but we believe that's a separate issue, and we're preparing to do that audit, I believe, in
First
2 weeks.
In January, yeah.
Okay, so when he found all this out, a resolution was passed to restrict his ability to spend money on the house. Is that true?
Yes.
Can one of you talk through that resolution?
Well, we had, it wasn't just for the house, it was for his overall spending was out of control. He truly believes that as supervisor, he could spend as he pleases. And it was a way for us to stop his spending by passing resolutions and that he could only spend X amount of money, but he still tried to go ahead and with additional expenses.
All right.
John, I think
what's
you're
the-
asking about the resolution that we used to block his development of the property initially.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had passed that in January. Over the course of reviewing some of the minutes and the actions the supervisor had taken, it was pretty readily apparent that the proper procedures hadn't been followed as far as the electors needing to approve the purchase of a property. That's pretty clear and spelled out in township law. That the electors need to have a actual resolution drafted in paper form that specifies the name of the property, all the legal descriptions, the terms, and then either to do the purchase directly or to authorize the board or the supervisor to make that purchase, and that had not been done. So going back through some of my historical work with the township in the past, it was a little bit complex, but to put together basically a cease and desist, demanding that we cease and desist all activity until we could settle the legal status of the property, and to demand that we get legal counsel at the township that was capable of determining how to remedy the situation. The idea originally wasn't, we don't want the property, it's let's get legal counsel in there and figure out first, how do we purchase this legally? What can we do now that it's already been done? And to stop any activity until we could get to that point. Bearing in mind, the electors don't explicitly have this power under township law or anywhere else. We only have, this was a non-binding resolution that we'd hoped would be followed. The council at the time agreed that it was non-binding but guiding. But also that we did need to do this in a legal and proper way in order to do anything further with the township property.
All right. So I understand now moving forward. Is there anything between that and the annual town meeting of the electors you want to talk about or not?
With the property,
Yeah.
it's been constantly what's going on with the property. We've been paying the electricity. We've been paying additional expenses while this whole, before this whole meeting occurred. And even after the meeting occurred, we switched attorneys. And then, so Carrie Lynn became our attorney, not just for the property, but for the township. And so I think that's kind of important because she became not just looking at one part of what's going on at the township, but she was able to see the overall situations and the problems that were occurring. And that I think really helped define what's going on with the property.
All right. So moving on to this, and I will properly use the word alleged annual town meeting of the electors. We wrote an article explaining how that meeting did not comply with township law. And I'll run through that right off the bat. The first set of petitions were not submitted in time, in the allotted time frame to allow for publication, and they were not filed with the township clerk. The second set of petitions had a forged date on them. It was actually the same set of petitions that was first submitted too late with a different date stamp on those petitions. And you can't reuse petitions from one date to another, which is what your supervisor Wilkie did. He used the same petitions for two separate filings. I understand there wasn't 15 signatures of voters total, which is required in order to hold a meeting, because the names were checked. There was no notice published in the newspaper, and that's required. The meeting that was convened was in the high school parking lot, but the agenda said it was supposed to be in the high school auditorium. And then they convened a meeting and then reconvened over in the township parking lot. The electors voted to ratify the purchase of real estate, which is not a power of the elector. That's not listed as one of their powers in the township code. And then the electors voted to sell the real property to Avon Cares Food Pantry. Although the electors have the power to direct the sale of property, they can only do that in a proper meeting and when they adopt a resolution, which they did not adopt. And then the township supervisor delivered a check and deposited a check to the township bank account without township board or the treasurer's approval or the clerk's approval. And there were other issues with requirements in order to sell real property of a township. Like you have to get a licensed, state licensed real estate appraisal before the sale. Before entering into the contract for sale, there has to be a sworn statement of anybody that's of the actual parties that are purchasing it, and that never happened. And you deal with Supervisor Wilkie's conflict of interest in the sale. And I think, I'm scrolling down on my screen.
Well, one other thing, John, in that electors' powers, they have the power to, direct a sale, but they can't direct who it's to be sold to.
No, I believe that the electors can direct or actually conduct the sale themselves. They need the supervisor and the clerk to do it, to sign it, but the electors do have that authority.
The electors can do that, but that's not what they did.
Well, they can direct the sale of property, but you're saying they can control who they get to sell it to?
Yes.
I don't believe that's accurate because there's other public laws that fall into the sale of public property.
The electors can order property sold, leased, purchased, conveyed, or regulate the use of the property, and they may delegate those powers to the township board. It doesn't say they can delegate the powers to the supervisor. That's in section 3050 of the township code.
Correct.
Let's see. And before they sell it, they have to either delegate the power or adopt a resolution. And they did neither. And the resolution has to state the intent to lease, and I'm reading from the statute, has to state the intent to lease or sell the property, describe the property in full, state the terms and conditions, and a resolution stating the intent to sell the property shall also contain pertinent information concerning size, use, and zoning. The value shall be determined by a real estate appraiser. And a resolution may direct the sale to be conducted by the staff of the township. A supervisor is not staff of the township.
And what are there any bid requirements in that? I know in the road district, electors can determine the sale of that property, but there has to be bidding. There's bidding requirements on the road district side. I don't recall on the township side.
Well, the Supreme Court's already said you can't sell anything for less than, I think, 80% or 90% of the appraised value, which is why an appraisal is required. So the electors can direct the sale conducted by the staff of the township or by listing with a licensed real estate agent. Now, the resolution has to be adopted prior to the sale. And then now let's go on to the supervisor's conflict of interest.
Yeah, let's note for the record, though, that the electors also have the power to donate the property or declare it surplus.
Yes, and they did not do that.
This is a case where the property, because it was going to a nonprofit, should have been declared as surplus. The donation should have been directed, in which case the sale and appraisal and all of those requirements would have been waived.
Right.
And that was really the intent, even going back to that original January town hall meeting where we prevented the initial transfer. But we can't direct the donation of the property because the original deed wasn't recorded properly. The clerk's stamp isn't on it in the original meeting that conveyed the purchase wasn't recorded as part of that deed. So the property couldn't have been transferred under any circumstance at the secondary meeting in September anyway.
Yeah, and
Good points.
I know, yeah, we know that electors had the power to donate to a nonprofit. They didn't do that though.
Right.
So nothing that the electors did at the alleged meeting complied with state law, and neither did the meeting. And as far as the supervisor being a director of Avon Cares Food Pantry, the Public Officer Prohibited Activities Act only authorizes municipal and county officers to hold a position on the board of a nonprofit that is interested in contracts, works, or business of the municipality or county. It does not authorize a township official to hold a position on the board of a nonprofit that is interested in the contract. So, and the sale of the house is a contract. So with the absence of the statute specifically authorizing a township supervisor or a township trustee to sit on the nonprofit, they can't do that. It's only authorized for a municipality or county. Do anybody disagree with that statement?
No, actually I do. And that is one of the reasons. Originally, I was the director of Avon Cares Food Pantry. And that is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons I did drop out from Avon Cares Food Pantry, because I was told it was a conflict of interest being on the board. I have a big passion for food pantries and the need to feed our community and all communities. And what he did, and the people who he invited to this meeting, a lot of them use the food pantry for support right now. And he is hurting the people who need the most support right now. He is telling them, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to help you out. You know what he's doing? He used over $10,000 that were donations that people gave from the community to help feed the people that need it right now. People struggle all the time. You know, sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't, but it's there for you. But if they have extra money and they are donating to the food pantry, why should the money be used to buy a condemned house? I don't understand that. We are in a pandemic right now, and that is one of my biggest issues. People need help right now. If he is the director of Avon Cares Food Pantry and the township, his number one priority right now is taking care of the people in his community, not a condemned house. You know, that's one of my big issues. What the supervisor has been doing, he's using the people that need support.
Well, I would agree with you that the statute doesn't prohibit a township official from sitting on a board of a nonprofit. It only prohibits it when that nonprofit is interested in a contract, work, or business of the township.
Right.
So for a trustee or whatever to sit on the board of any nonprofit, that's not a conflict. But the second he entered into this contract to sell the house by writing the check, that was a conflict in my non-legal opinion.
I mean, he wrote the check, he deposited the check, never told us that he was doing that. I contacted our finance accountants and I asked her, has there been any form of payment? And she sent me the check. That's how I found out about the check that the supervisor wrote from Avon Cares, signed it, and deposited it into the township.
What's his attitude when you discuss these matters and try to restrain some of his actions? How's he respond to that?
I mean, right now we're pretty hostile. It's a hostile situation because there's been issues even before the house with the cars and other illegal issues that he's done. So it's not very well. So whenever we have a situation, I refer to our attorney, and she's able to give us the advice. And she strongly has told the supervisor, what you are doing is wrong. Even after the meeting in September, Carrie Lynn sent everybody an email saying the property was illegally done. Don't worry about it. There's nothing that can be done about it. That did not stop the supervisor.
Yeah, we know in the past he's transferred, 3 vehicles out of the township's name without township board approval, and one of them went into his personal name. Another one went into the Avon Cares, and then he installed 2 electric vehicle charging stations, which the vehicle they transferred into his personal name is an electric vehicle. So he's been refueling his private car on the township dime every day when he goes to the township. And he installed, was it 2 bus stops or 1?
He wanted to put 1 in.
So he spent money on a bus.
It would only be on one side of the road. So if people were going the other direction, there would be no bus stop for them to get off to be able to cross a busy street.
And no bus stops on that route anyway.
No bus stop, right.
But didn't he spend money to try to install a bus stop?
Thousands of dollars. And those bills we are still disputing.
All right. So what happened last week with the township, with the property?
He transferred the deed and he paid, or the township, from what we know for sure. I can't, until we have the documents. I actually have a email out to our accountant to see when and how we paid for the back tax or for the taxes. Because somehow they were magically paid on December 18th and gave him the power to take to get the deed.
The taxes
You
were paid?
You should be able to FOIA. You should be able to FOIA a copy of the payment to see who paid the tax bill.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I would get it today from the accountants. If not, that's what we'll have to do, because this is all a plan. Because we kept questioning him, have you transferred the deed yet? Have you transferred the deed yet? And he's like, no, no, no. So he knew he had to pay the taxes before he could put the deed in his name or in Avon Care's name. Everything was calculated. He's very calculated in what he does. Insurance. He said he took the insurance off the house, and he said he had his own insurance, which he did, but it did not put the township name on the insurance. So if anything was to happen, we would still be liable.
Yeah,
we have those documents.
He would get the insurance payment, not the township.
It's
Correct.
a disaster. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that we learned about that insurance policy when we received a copy of it is that he has had, or at least it demonstrates that there was an intent for Supervisor Wilkie to transfer this property to Avon Cares all along. The original insurance document goes back and coincides with that original July purchase of the property. So it's been enforced since that time and paid for by Avon Cares, which is clearly saying he bought it using the township as a vehicle and his position as a county board member as well to get the property purchased at a preferred price, to use his influence on both sides of the governmental equation, to transfer that then subsequently into his personal pocket for his nonprofit, and then use the rental income from that to supplement or somehow provide revenues or income streams to his nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Where's
And
law
allow the
enforcement
township's
on this?
credit. And
Law enforcement.
I can tell you that the county board is really disappointed in this, but I don't know about law enforcement directly.
The law enforcement, the detectives are investigating it right now, but that's all I know. It's under investigation. The state's attorney is aware of what's going on. It's a waiting game right now, but the longer this is, the more damage he's doing to Avon Township.
Yeah, because something needs to be done about this house before the Avon Care sells the house and gets extra money. Because once they sell the house, yeah, you can still claw it back, but some innocent person is going to be out of money. Or if they even rent the house, some innocent person is going to be out of money. My opinion is township needs to sue him, Avon Cares, and the county clerk for processing the transfer. Actually, it would be the county recorder, because he signed his name alleging he was authorized to sell it. Well, he should have had to produce a set of meeting minutes for the township board, authorize him to sell that and transfer it.
Correct.
And I know there's no meeting minutes authorizing that.
No, not at all.
And somebody needs to sue him to get the township meeting of the electors dissolved or considered void, because there wasn't enough people on the petition to begin with, enough voters or electors, and it was a forced petition that created a meeting that didn't have enough signatures on it, and it was held in the wrong place.
Has the board discussed taking legal action directly against the supervisor for this?
It's been discussed, but the hardest problem is he's already costing the township thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So right now we are hoping that the law enforcement, the state's attorney, they take action on the supervisor. I mean, we're already out, thousands of dollars. This is going to be very costly.
One thing to look at then, you ask your attorney in regards to being able to capture his bond. I'm not sure what may or may not be applicable, but a lot of those funds may be recoverable through the bond that he is required to have as supervisor.
Definitely.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Thank you.
And the supervisor just believes he's above the law, even when the state's attorney's office advised him not to have the meeting.
Yeah, I read that letter.
Didn't even faze him. Did not even faze him.
Which county are you in again?
Lake County.
You're in Lake County? Okay.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else to add to the discussion? I guess we finally got to the property was transferred. And in my opinion, it needs to be clawed back. And he didn't have the authority to transfer it. The board didn't give him the authority. The electors never gave him the authority, even if it was a legal meeting, and he couldn't have done it. So is there any final comments?
To me, this is just a disaster. And I'm going to state this again. He's really hurting the people that need the most support in Avon Township. Every dollar that he's using towards the property can feed somebody in our community. People who are donating, they got to understand what's going on. I believe in giving food. I believe that if people want to donate to Avon Cares Food Pantry and help us, go through the Northern Illinois Food Bank, market for Avon Cares Food Pantry. That money will go, the food donation will go to Avon Cares. Everything he's doing is wrong. But when you are hurting our community, I can't live with that. I will not stop. I will not stop.
Good. And I agree. He did steal the vehicles, especially the ones that electric vehicle they put in his name and installed. And he went a step further by installing electric recharging stations that he pulls into every day when he goes to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the township isn't buying your fuel, are they?
No, I mean, and if you go back to our meetings, he lied. He said that he didn't transfer the titles, but I had proof that he transferred the titles, and he was lying in the meetings. And I'm like, but I have the information. I have the proof. You did it 2 days after our board meeting before. You're lying in front of everybody. And I'll tell you, the very best thing and the saddest about COVID is that it's brought our meetings to Zoom, to be able to publicly watch what's going on in Avon Township and other communities. And that's something we're not going to stop. we did set a policy in that even when we go back to in-person meetings, our meetings are going to be videotaped, because before COVID, our meetings were, nobody would show up except for one person, and it became a he said, she said. Jeannie took wonderful minutes, but at the time we had no idea it was going to progress the way it has.
Yeah.
And this way, if you can't make it to our meetings, we put it online, you know what's going on, you hear and you see what's taking place. So if I am being misspoken, you're going to be able to see in the video. If the supervisor is not telling the truth, it's all there. And that's I think the best part about all of this. It's a learning curve that there's no way a year and a half ago he would have been able to get away with all of this if we would have been having our meetings live, on video.
Right.
I
That's
agree.
one of the first things we tell folks when we do our training. If you go to a meeting, you got to capture it on video. Without video and audio, you're fighting an uphill battle. But boy, when it's videotaped or recorded, it's a game changer.
And I truly believe that the videos that were taken at the September 24th town hall meeting is crucial. It shows exactly what he did. It has video of him being in the high school parking lot, you could count the number of people that were there. You could follow the story all the way to the township. He raised his hand and said, yes, let's transfer the property. He's a supervisor. He's the president of Avon Cares. We saw him raise your hand. There is no question about that. I mean, I don't understand why it's taking so long, why so many people still believe him. If the law is the law, you are stating all the laws, Crystal's stating the laws that he's broken. Why should this take so many months for it to get resolved? Let's get that money back into the.
Well, that's a great question. Just as a piece of history, early on here locally, we exposed some corruption, and we were attacked viciously for exposing it. And we were told that we're wrong and it's not true. And it was as clear as can be. And it took 5 years before the feds indicted the couple. Actually, it was a mother and daughter-in-law. But for 5 years, people said we were lying about it. And finally, we were vindicated that, they pled guilty. But this process is slow and painful, unfortunately.
Every day I get people telling me that nothing's going to be done, that nobody's going to go after a politician, nobody's going to go after Terry Wilby. And I don't believe that. I believe that wrong is wrong, right is right. And we have to stand up. There are a lot of us who believe that he's doing something wrong. It's just that we got to get the law enforcement to take a stand. Otherwise, it's just giving him saying, I'm not doing anything wrong. Nobody is going after me. So I'm going to keep on doing it.
Has law enforcement interviewed any of you folks?
Not yet. I've just been in contact with them through email, just checking to see if the investigation has started.
Maybe it's time to start something civilly.
Yeah, when they refuse to do it, I mean, unfortunately, we see this same problem, throughout the state. Law enforcement's become reluctant to investigate this kind of stuff because state's attorneys don't want to fight public corruption. They just ignore it.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that, because township government is one of the lower forms of government. If we cannot keep that in check, that is a sad statement for everything else that's going on. I am not a politician. I am not elegant. I don't speak elegantly, but you know something? I have a passion. I believe that we could do so much better in Avon Township than what we are doing. But we have to be able to get rid of him. Law enforcement, people have got to stand up and say, what he's doing is wrong.
Couldn't agree with you more.
About this, but I go nuts when people keep telling me nothing's going to be done, and I'm like, that's not true. I am not going to stop.
They tell us that all the time. So.
Well,
I think one of the worst parts about all of this, especially as related to the House, is that after that January meeting where we said you need to stop all of this, I spent a lot of time working with local villages, municipalities, their mayors, and working directly with Terry Wilkie on this, saying, let's bring in a nonprofit that can actually work with these housing units, that's done these projects, that's proven. And even groups like Affordable Housing of Lake County, they said, we can't do anything with this property. It's not worth it for us.
Yeah.
These are organizations that specialize in providing and rehabbing these low-income houses that are distressed, bringing them back up the standards and getting people in them that want to live there, that are going to become productive members of the community and get that help up. They won't even touch this. They want nothing to do with it. The property's in such a distressed position. So he's taken all of this money, all these resources, started all of this conflict, caused all of these legal bills over a property that, based on the estimates of an NPO that does this for a living, said, no, this is a rip and replace down to the foundation. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I saw pictures of it on Google Earth and it looked pretty tiny.
They won't touch it. Habitat for Humanity won't touch it. There's other organizations that want nothing to do with it. And I'm a board member for my homeowners association. We deal with construction companies. I've got a couple of them that said it would be easier to rip and replace this or just turn it into a park.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered everything today. I'm going to stop recording.